This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth, and as viewers of this channel are already well aware, we have been covering the global movement to legalize cannabis for quite some time now, and over those years, I've seen so many companies come and go. Some have been very successful, some have not, and it begs the question, how on earth does one stay cut above, this competition in this incredibly competitive space? So joining us on the line today to help us understand how to navigate this space is Dan Anglin of CannAmercaBrands. CannAmercaBrands.com is the website. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on Press for Truth today to help us understand how one can navigate this incredibly competitive space. So before we get into that, I got to say I was pretty intrigued by your company slogan. So maybe we could start with there. What prompted you to come up with the slogan, Brand of the Free?
Oh, that's a very good question, and thank you, Dan, for having me on. Our original slogan was Taste of Freedom, because we were primarily a confection-based cannabis company. And additional slogans are Be Free, and our team came up with Brand of the Free, Home of the Crave. And what it really is about is my service in the United States Marine Corps back in the late 80s and early 90s. And, just my entry into the cannabis industry is really about that freedom for adults to make their choice of what type of, products they would like to consume, and also for medical patients to have that freedom to be able to choose cannabis, which, unlike the country of Canada, we don't all have in the United States yet. So it's still a movement. And it's a freedom-based movement. And so, we just felt that the identity of the brand, connecting it to my time as a veteran and our identity as kind of representatives of, the consumers who are desiring these types of products, we just felt that they would connect with those ideals that we have as a company.
Well, that's brilliant. As we often have said here at Press for Truth, cannabis is the gateway to liberty, really, because once people understand just how much they've been lied to in regards to this, it could trigger them going down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and they might wake up to all sorts of things they've been lied to about. So I think that's a great position to take with your company. Now, what sort of strategic moves do you have moving forward in order to generate profits for your company and to kind of stay a cut above?
Well, that's a really good question. In 2017, we recognized that in order to take our company into other markets, we either needed to raise $10 or $15 million for every location, because in the United States, it's geographically limited to just the state that has legalized it. You can't ship it from one place to another. And so for us to make the leap from Colorado into other markets, which was necessary for us to survive and really thrive in a saturated marketplace, we needed to create a licensing opportunity. So what we did was we created an intellectual property company where we put all of our trade secrets, all of our supply chain, all of our know-how, and we licensed that to operators in all of these markets in the United States. And I really look forward to licensing it in the nation of Canada, once the country really determines where they're going to land on finished products. Right now, your products are pretty limited compared to some of the markets that have recreational and medical in the United States. And I know that's going to change soon. And so that's a focus for us, is to create a relationship in Canada that we can license and bring our products in the United States to Canada. But the primary focus for 2019 is to continue to expand from Colorado, Nevada, and Maryland into all the other markets where, there are commercial, regulated, licensed businesses who would like to add to their top line sales by utilizing our know-how, gaining our brand, and gaining all of our intellectual property for them to manufacture and distribute into their market.
Well, you've clearly done your due diligence into how it is that we get things done in this space. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering now, what stage is the company at in terms of finance? Are you ahead cash-wise? Do you hold any debt at the moment?
We have some debt that when we became public, was part of the original offering. There's 3.8 million in debt currently, and our cash flows are doing well. You know, as a licensing company, we don't have a lot of overhead. We're lean and mean and focused on expansion and supply chain. I think what's important to understand about where we're going is we're diving right into with the passage of the Farm Bill, hemp has been made federally legal in the United States. And while there's some limitations on products, there's no limitations for our company on our expectations of what we can produce. And so we announced about 2 weeks ago a joint venture with another publicly traded company in Canada, an LP, Invictus MD, and another company, CBD Distribution, for acquiring a hemp processing facility here in Colorado. So, we're in the stages of finalizing our definitive agreement for that acquisition, and I'm setting our sights on vertical integration in hemp. So, our next steps in this space is to acquire farms and acquire manufacturing facilities where we can then do global distribution. We will never turn away from cannabis because, I've been in cannabis for 10 years and I believe in it, and I think there's plenty of space across the world for cannabis. But right now the window has opened, and while everybody's jumping through it, we want to take our expertise and our supply chain knowledge and bring that into the hemp space, which is missing brands right now. Hemp has been operating, at a very steady rate. And right now, the expectations of the world is that it will increase. And the only way it increases is if people with branding experience and distribution experience like ourselves get right into the space. And so we've made that leap, and we continue to focus on that while we also focus on expanding the cannabis business.
Well, let's talk about the business itself and specifically the products that you offer. What are you currently offering product-wise, and how are you staying competitive with your competitors in that regard?
That's a very good question. So we cut our teeth in the concentrates arena. You can't make a finished product if you don't have that experience in extraction and creating quality oil to create quality products. So while we're known as a gummy company, we're truly an extraction-based company that creates products based on formulation and science of what to do with cannabinoids. And in our medical market in Maryland, we're creating wax shatter concentrates, disposable pens, 510 cartridges. We're developing gel caps. We're moving into the pod arena. What I mean by pod is similar to some brands that you're familiar with, where the cannabis is inside a unit or inside a pod that goes into the unit, and that's the vaporization. We think that's the future versus the 510 screw carts. We're doing both. And we're moving into other product development as well. In fact, in the hemp space, we're very excited about not only human consumption and use products, but also pet products. And we think that, there's certainly a number of products out there, but we want to bring our expertise of quality because pets are family members for Americans, Canadians, and people around the world, and they want quality products. They want to know that their pet is consuming something that's safe for them, and that's what we're attempting to develop now. Next phase in the CBD space is utilizing nutraceuticals and other dietary supplements as an enhancement with CBD. And these are all FDA-regulated products and FDA-regulated positions. So we've begun the work to really start looking at what are the pathways for getting these types of products into the hands of consumers, and what type of regulatory structure do we need in order to properly do this and make all of the investment worth it for the consumers. So while the Farm Bill was a blessing, it also created a new layer of government that most operators who were operating in the past weren't used to. But coming from the cannabis space, we're regulated as much as casinos and people who handle nuclear weapons. So we're very used to regulations. And I think it's a perfect fit for companies like ourselves with lots of experience in cannabis to immediately get into the hemp-based CBD product development. We
Well,
couldn't be more excited about it.
here in Canada, we've obviously legalized federally on the federal level. You are located in the United States, and they seem to be falling behind on that regards. What do you think? The million-dollar question here is the likelihood that Washington, D.C. will finally come to their senses, or maybe the rest of the country, all 50 states, eventually legalizing both for recreational and medicinal. Do you see that eventually coming down the road?
That is such a good question, but it's also a difficult crystal ball to look at. Right now, the legalization of cannabis is more popular than any of our politicians combined, right? Take them all, compare their polls to the popularity of legalizing cannabis, and cannabis wins out every time. The issue, I think, is that the United States political spectrum is so polarized and so focused on, explosive issues that good policy like decriminalization of cannabis will likely get set aside until some of these other larger arguments can be resolved. It's a shame. Congress knows they need to do something about it. The majority of the members of the United States Senate represent states that either have full-blown legalization of both medical and recreational, or at least some sort of decriminalization or legalization of cannabis. And now with hemp, we've had instances across the country where law enforcement officers are confusing, the transportation of hemp as potentially cannabis, and they don't really know what to do about it. Just a week ago, a truckload of hemp traveling through the state of Oklahoma was seized, and every member of the people inside the truck were arrested. And unfortunately, because of the government shutdown, the lab that tests that material is not open and running. So there's pretty big problems. My prediction would be that President Trump would see the value in connecting with voters that maybe he's not connecting with now, and take action on his own prior to the election.
Mm-hmm.
He could certainly do an executive order that moves the needle. My preference would be decriminalization versus legalization, so that we're treated more like alcohol and other substances. I think it's a little complicated with the Farm Bill, because now they've added, the Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration, and they likely want to do the same thing to cannabis. But that's okay. I've been regulated for 10 years. I'm pretty used to it.
Yeah, there's heavy regulation here in this space too in Canada. And I would think that, speaking about the United States, Donald Trump would realize that this is going to create high-paying, sustainable jobs for Americans moving forward. One would think, that he could see that. But I guess in closing here, for people who, maybe prospective investors, people who are curious to learn, where do they find out about you guys? How do they get involved with you guys? And where do they follow you to find out what you're going to be doing in the near future?
Well, thank you. I think for investors who've been cautious of the space, that there's some clear signs that cannabis investment is the right time now. And the Department of Justice has already come out and said that they will not pursue any operators that are in states that are legal. So it's not quite the Cole memo, but it's as good as we're going to get with the current administration. And I think that states continue to look at the opportunities for economic recovery as well as economic infusion by legalizing these things, both with jobs for the industry directly. There's over 80,000 people employed in the state of Colorado in the marijuana industry. And that doesn't count any of the people that service us, folks who make packaging, folks who make, all kinds of different products and equipment that we need. So it's a very large impact to every state. I anticipate it'll continue to roll the way it's going, state by state. And investors should be looking at all of these legitimate businesses with models and pro formas like ours that really demonstrate that we've put the time into making sure this is done right, and we've created the infrastructure for it. On the CSE, our ticker is CANA, CANA. On the OTC, we just listed in January, we are CNNXF. And that means that both Americans and Canadians have easy access to purchasing stock in our company. And, our focus is continued growth. Every quarter, we are committed to expanding the opportunities of the business, be it cannabis or now hemp. And I think with our expertise combined, our executive team would have about 45 years of experience in this industry. And I think that enough should be what investors are looking at, is who's part of the company, not just what is the company plan, what is the company assets. We're currently, I believe, undervalued. I mean, we have 52 million shares outstanding. Fully diluted shares is 76 million, with a float of 14,842,000. Our cash right now is 2.2 million, with that 3.8 million in debt. We just closed our first tranche of the first $10 million raise 2 weeks ago, and we're about to open up for the second tranche. So I believe that'll probably happen late next week or early the following week. So there's plenty of opportunities for investors to learn more about us. Googling my name will absolutely give you all of my history. I'm actually pretty well known in the industry itself and with the media. Just looking for those tickers will also provide you with our deck, all of our press release, and all of the information that's out there on the CSE and OTC.
Well, you've clearly figured out how to stay a cut above of all the rest. So I guess just in closing, any final thoughts on the need for people to really understand the importance of maintaining their own individual freedoms and liberties on the individual level?
Yeah, I would say that most of the opposition is now trying to enhance their messaging from liberty to license. You may have had these kind of conversations where what the opposition says is, we're not asking to exercise liberties, we're asking for licenses to exercise our liberties. And I think that's a bastardization of the intent of the founding fathers of the U.S. and the governments of all of these countries around the world, of people who have the freedom to make choices. And so it continues to be a fight of the freedom for adults to make choices and the freedom for patients to make choices. And don't get comfortable just because your state has said yes to something, because what's typical is they bring in rules that restrict the products that are available. And that's not true liberty, right? True choice is this plant, both the hemp and the cannabis plant, can make millions of types of products that can help people. And the only time we actually have true freedom is if we have the access to do everything we can do with this plant. And that's what's important.
Yeah, the last thing we need is more bureaucratic red tape, and more government involvement is always kind of messing things up. We don't need them irradiating it. They're in bed with big pharma. We're going to get GMO issued, Monsanto seed probably. All of that is a bunch of nonsense we need to stay away from, and we need to look to the independents and the companies like yours that are doing the proper due diligence to make sure this is done the proper way. So Dan, once again, thanks so much for joining us today. Links will be located in the description below. CannAmercaBrands.com is the website. Once again, thanks so much for joining us today. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.